Welcome, fans, to another live edition of the Hannibal TV Fan Forum on the Hannibal TV on YouTube. Today, the topic is one that I'm quite interested in. Very long debated discourse on this particular matter, and that, of course, being out of the teams of the Road Warriors, Legion of Doom, and Demolition, which team was superior. And we've got a ton of fan input already sent to us, and you're free, of course, to jump in with your input. But it's going to be interesting. There's a lot of areas to discuss, and hopefully we'll reach a shared conclusion at the end. But before we get into that, I have to introduce, as always, the man who is the godfather of the Hannibal TV, Hannibal himself. Hannibal, how are you today?
I'm doing good. Just to let you guys know, we're now streaming these on Twitter at the Hannibal TV too. I finally broke down with the $8 a month fee. Demolition Crush with Crush for number one. Well, I'm gonna let Jack Kilby control this one. They did have a great theme song. Here's a question though. It sounds an awful like when I was a kid. I remember when Rick Derringer says, "Here comes the axe." Am I crazy, or was when I was a kid? Does it sound like ass? Because I remember when I was like 5 years old, me and my friends would always play it because this was before the internet and it was hard to find stuff that had swearing on it. And we were like, did they say "Here comes the axe" or ass? But that's just a funny thing. It's a great theme song that still pumps me up to this day.
Yeah, and it's one of the areas that we're going to compare because the Road Warriors had that at least in the NWA, WCW, and other locations that great Black Sabbath song Iron Man, and really kind of almost invented that crowd pop that is still referred to today as the Road Warrior pop. But by way of a little bit of introduction, we're talking about two of the most iconic tag teams in the golden era of professional wrestling. Briefly, the Road Warriors were put together in 1983 by Ole Anderson in Georgia Championship Wrestling after he says in his book that I read last year, and it's a great book too, Inside Out, that he saw the movie The Road Warrior and decided that would be a great gimmick. And he had Animal Joe in Georgia Championship Wrestling, who was using a biker sort of gimmick, and then came across Mike Hegstrad, and boom, they were born. Demolition, of course, I guess it's fair to say that most historians would agree that Vince McMahon tried to sign the Road Warriors away from Jim Crockett Promotions in the NWA and was unsuccessful. And so they put their heads together and came up with Demolition of Axe, and originally Randy Colley, the Moon Dog. So it was Bill Eadie and Randy Colley. But then the fans were shouting "Moondog," I guess, at Randy Colley, and Barry Darsow was brought in, and the rest is history. But Hannibal, wanted to get your opinion on that particular matter right off the bat. Do you think that Demolition, and I know I should also mention Demolition, Great North Wrestling vets, both in appearances and in-ring work, and of course we had Animal several years ago here. So do you think that Demolition were a conscious invention based on, you hear the knock on them, which I don't agree with, but Road Warrior ripoffs? What's your opinion of that, and based on your shoot interviews that you did with them?
Ibsen, I never heard that about them allegedly being offered a Hall of Fame induction. For what you were saying, they were based on the Road Warriors. I think everyone's admitted that, including Demolition themselves. And for a lot of people, And looking back, this is easy to say, but for a lot of people like me at the time, who I actually saw Demolition before I saw the Road Warriors, because I first got exposed to wrestling through WWE, and then I watched tapes after that at the video store. So I definitely saw Demolition before the Road Warriors, and then of course they ended up feuding shortly after that. But as far as the comparison, obviously the Road Warriors were better in the long run, but I would say overall, you could say Demolition had a better run than them in WWE. I'll let the fans weigh in, but it didn't seem like the Road Warriors overall had the greatest run in the WWE. But I remember in Ottawa at the Ottawa Civic Center, I think it was October. It was the year that the Demolition, or that the Road Warriors came in. They wrestled the Road
92,
Warriors. Yeah, it would
90.
have been like October 90, and it was a couple of days after my birthday. And I remember the arena was packed. I don't
Yeah,
even remember who won, but the crowd was very loud for the match.
I think that was, and if the fans, if I'm mistaken, I'm sure the fans will correct me, but I think that was one of the major criticisms of the Road Warriors run, LOD, Legion of Doom, in WWF at the time, was they worked a lot of six-man tag matches when Crush, the late great Brian Adams, was brought in, because at that point in time, Bill Eadie had developed some health problems, and it was being phased out. So they did a lot of six-mans with the Legion of Doom and Ultimate Warrior against Demolition and Crush. Just as an aside, Crush was one of the first wrestlers that I ever met in person in Barrie after a show about 1994-ish, and what a tremendously nice guy. But looking specifically in terms of their in-ring style as a comparison point, the Road Warriors had that
I
attack.
found the card. I hate to interrupt you, but this is a pretty cool card. I just got to throw it up. It was October 22nd, 1990. The Road Warriors actually defeated Demolition. But what a weird, I don't remember this. Moondog White, Sailor White on a WWE card. I have no
Wow.
recollection of that. The Hart
Wow.
Foundation against Rhythm and Blues. I remember that very, very well. The Warlord beat Coco Beware. Mr. Perfect against Texas Tornado. Shane Douglas against the Brawler. Jimmy Snuka defeated the Black Demon. And the Legion of Doom defeated Demolition. So what a birthday present that was. But Sailor White, wow. Never knew
Yes,
that.
absolutely. I must have slept on that too. Man, what a card. What an absolutely stacked card that was. But that was one of the criticisms that they were doing the six-mans a lot. I think that was one of the rare encounters where they actually were 2-on-2.
Yes. And by the way, Colton, we just did the Hannibal TV members only chat where Jack really went into the whole uh, thing with Bagwell. But yeah, I guess from talking to Demolition 2 and the Road Warriors, they didn't necessarily work very well together, even though they were very good friends behind the scenes. In fact, it was Animal that gave me Barry Darso's phone number when I started booking Demolition. So they were very good friends right up until the end.
Well, it's kind of a clash of styles, really, when you think about it. The Road Warriors would run in and crush guys, and Doomsday Device 1, 2, 3. Demolition were more brawlers, more technical wrestling, if you want to call it that. A lot of blows, beating individuals down. Whereas the Road Warriors were, I think, generally more athletic in nature than Demolition. Would you agree with that, Hannibal?
Yeah, they definitely had better physiques. But again, they weren't. I think it was because of Hawk and the unreliability that they weren't used as well as they should have been in WWE, but both of the Demolition guys were extremely reliable, and I know that helped them behind the scenes. What were the six? Which of your favorite was your favorite persona of Crush of his six? Mine, I would have to say, although I was not a fan of them replacing acts with Crush or the downgrade of Demolition's push, that really angered me as a Demolition fan. I would say I still like Crush the best in Demolition, also because I'm a big Demolition fan.
Yeah, I that's got to be right up there, 1A and 1B. But I think his when he came back and turned on Randy Savage, and they had that excellent match in WrestleMania, I believe it was 10. He had the face paint again after that cartoonish Kona Crush run, and was just a lethal kind of killer. I thought that was excellent, and one of the latter highlights of his career, if you don't factor in his work with Brian Clark as Chronic, which I absolutely liked. That team didn't think they got the best shake in WWF. But what about
the worst? Was the Disciples of Apocalypse version of him?
Yes.
By far.
Yeah.
And by the way, I saw Crush against Macho Man at the Robert Goethe Arena in Hull in 1993, like February 1993. And you know what? I actually heard Rene Goulet saying this recently, that Macho Man as an agent was difficult to deal with because sometimes he would only want to go 6 or 7 minutes. I have to say, for everyone that talks about Macho Man always pulling out all the stops, this was Hull, Quebec, and there was probably only 12 or 1,300 fans there. This was during the Bret Hart era, where the crowds were dwindling. I can't remember the main event. I think it was Macho Man against Crush, but they went like 5 or 6 minutes, and the finish was IRS coming out and hitting Macho Man with the briefcase, and it was a DQ. It was just a very short match with a crap finish that even as a obsessed wrestling fan as a kid, I felt disappointed at.
Yeah, that wasn't my experience when I saw Savage against Hogan back when I was really young in Maple Leaf Gardens. It seems like they went about 12 minutes, give or take, but maybe
I saw Crush versus Doink live too, by the way, the Ottawa Civics. I could go on and on about these house shows. Again, they eliminate the house shows. It's going to hurt them, but sorry to interrupt.
No problem. Next, let's talk about the look and presentation of the Road Warriors compared to Demolition, with the spiked shoulder pads, the face paint, of course, and the haircuts. They were very, very intimidating. I think especially in WCW, NWA with the black pads, and then Demolition with the they had the face paint too. They at one point had a mask, but got rid of that, and then they just took it off for the majority of their run. They had the the studded gear, kind of like I don't know. To me, it always looked derivative of the Road Warriors. Who do you think had? And we're not talking about physiques, but just presentation. Who do you think had the edge there?
I really liked the masks the Demolition would wear out to the ring, but honestly, looking back at the Demolition outfits, they don't age very well. They're almost, I mean, if guys with builds like that came out today, I mean, those guys were tough and they did work a hard hitting style. And one thing I'll say about Demolition, they are thick. These are like, when you're around them in person, I think anyone would agree with me. They are like solid, dinosaurish, like looking builds. Like they look like a guy that you could hit real hard and not much is going to happen. But I would definitely say Demolition. And one of my favorite memories of Demolition, and I'll have to go back again to the Ottawa Civic Center, this is when there was a delay of when superstars would play. And they were coming out to wrestle the Hart Foundation, and it was the main event of whatever year that was, maybe 1991. It was still cold out. I remember that. We had not seen that there was now three of them, and just seeing the three of them come out with the mask, and in the Civic Center, it was a long aisle, and nobody knew. Everyone was just like, what the hell is going on? There's three Demolition now. Like, definitely, like, how is there suddenly three? Imagine that now. There's no cell phone. There's no way to check this out. There's no explanation. You just come to a show, and out of nowhere, there's three Demolition. That was wild. But yeah, I would say the shoulder pads were good, but the masks were really cool on Demolition. The makeup on both of them was cool. Road Warriors was more iconic. In my personal experience, they all did their own makeup too, both teams. So that was also cool.
Next, in terms of promos, I think the Road Warriors definitely have the edge. Hawk was a very funny guy, laugh out loud funny. Animal had his style too. He was in and out pretty quick, but man, I thought Hawk was very good on the stick. Demolition, I liked Axe's gravelly voice and his straight ahead sort of style. Smash wasn't as strong, but passable. I think I can think of a number of not necessarily WWF promos from the Road Warriors, but NWA that are classics, and I don't know if we can say the same about Demolition.
I like Demolition as promos. Like, I really miss the days where it was those 30 seconds to 2-minute promos. I love that. I hate these dragged out 10, 20-minute promos that happen these days that they dub segments. Everything's a segment these days. I can't remember like no promos of either of them that really stand out to me, but the Road Warriors definitely had some awesome promos. I think there's like an AWA promo compilation of the Road Warriors that I used to watch before I would amateur wrestle sometimes in my like 2011, 2012 return to amateur wrestling. It would pump me up. I even told Animal that when I met him later. It was just like, they were just like monsters that would go in and destroy you. And what is it? The one of Hawk is like, there's weasels and there's weasel smashers, and we're weasel smashers. And it's just like the weird things that they would say, but they said it with such intensity that you loved it.
And dead men don't make money. In terms of
who's gonna stop us unless they had a gun.
Exactly. So I think, I like Demolition's promos, but definitely Road Warriors kind of had the edge on that one.
And again, would they, if it was today's and it had to be written promos, could you even come up with half the lines that these guys came up with?
No.
And I like, by the way, the Demolition would always say, Master Fuji. Tell him, Master Fuji.
God bless Harry. In terms of crowd reaction, again, touched on it earlier. Road Warriors had arguably one of the loudest pops ever, and we're talking singles and teams. The fans went nuts when they, hit the ring and beat up some job guys, especially. Demolition, I thought, got pretty strong reactions, especially as heels. But it seemed they lost, in my opinion anyway, a little bit of their heat when they went babyface and didn't get that same level that the Road Warriors did. What are your thoughts on that, Hannibal?
They definitely did not get the Road Warriors pop, but they were over as baby faces without a doubt, particularly, WrestleMania 6 when they beat Andre the Giant and Haku at the Toronto Skydome, which, by the way, that's what it looked like that night. And I'm not denying they didn't have a good crowd last night, but they only used half the arena. Because look at it again, just even Hogan versus Rocket looked like that. So a lot of people were saying, "Oh, it was packed." It's like there was 20,000 people of it not even used. But yeah, I remember in person, Demolition was really over. And I'm a bit younger than you. As a kid, everyone loved Demolition at my school. Like I would say, even in Canada, before the Road Warriors came, you never heard anyone talk about the Road Warriors as a kid. And even when the Road Warriors came, I think for a while there, Demolition was still people seeing, because you would in those days, I mean, you'd play WWE out in the schoolyard. And I remember everyone always wanted to be Demolition or Hulk Hogan or Macho Man, but there wouldn't be that many that would say the Road Warriors in those years. But obviously, the Road Warriors were known for the Road Warrior pop. And even when we used Road Warrior Animal in Great North Wrestling, I think it was 2015,
In
he got
Brockville.
in Brockville, yeah, he got a huge pop. And we had over 1,000 fans that night. So
Mm,
he still drew.
mhm.
He was weird to deal with, but a very nice guy, but weird to do business with in some ways, but extremely nice.
Yeah, again, I've got about 8 or 9 years on you, but I remember getting really into the Road Warriors through the magazines. And my family had a place in South Carolina, Myrtle Beach, and I watched TBS religiously when I was there. So I think you're right. Aside from the early supermarks that got all the wrestling, the Apter magazines, etc., Demolition definitely had more television exposure.
And if you think of the pay-per-views back then, that again, it's not like now. Well, first of all, it's a lot cheaper to get a pay-per-view. You just need Netflix or Peacock. Then you had to put out the money and have that box. You couldn't even order a pay-per-view without that black box. But the main pay-per-view matches I remember of the Road Warriors was when they beat the Nasty Boys, or was it them that there was them against the Nasty Boys. That was one I remember. I don't quite remember the finish.
SummerSlam.
Yeah, so in Madison Square Garden, right? The
Yes.
Power and Glory at WrestleMania 7, and then the 92. I'm not saying they're good, but like those ones stand out to me. And
Yeah.
then the 92 Wembley, because they came out on bikes again with the stupid puppet that apparently
Yeah.
was Paul, which I even thought was stupid in those years, and I was a kid.
Yes.
But basically, other than those three, can anyone tell me what's their favorite WWE pay-per-view match of theirs? Because it's not like there's a lot you could remember. Where Demolition, it seems to me there's a lot more WWE pay-per-view memories. That Royal Rumble where they were number 1 and 2. If you
Yeah.
remember that, I
Yeah.
remember. Like again, I had got the VHS tape of that, and I hadn't even heard that ever happened. So the years pre-internet, you're watching a VHS tape of something that's like 6 months old, and you can still be shocked.
And definitely we're stocking the video stores for those. Yeah, I'll skip down to that though. I think in totality, you look at the Road Warriors career again in NWA. They had programs with the Midnight Express, Tully and Arn in Chicago, where the Dusty finish happened, and he basically killed Chicago because they won, but then they didn't win. It's when Tully and Arn were the champions, but I still enjoyed their matches. What a great clash of styles. The Steiners, they had some versatility. Demolition, they had some feuds with Strike Force, Heart Foundation, Powers of Pain.
Oh,
We're
I
forgetting.
gotta say, Best of WWE Volume 17. They show that Strike Force against Demolition match where I think they won the title. That was a great match where I think Martel, was it either Martel or Santana, takes the Demolition move to the outside with a chair use and is stretchered out. I remember I watched that maybe 20 times. That was that for one whatever reason I really liked that match. Ken Patera is also on that tape wrestling Dino Bravo, my good friend Ken Patera.
Yeah, the WrestleMania match where Demolition beat Strike Force for the belts was a great heel turn which everybody's talking about today as we record this, in light of John Cena's heel turn, where Santana inadvertently hit Martel with the flying forearm. He went down, bailed, and he got hit with the cane for Mr. Fuji, and the belts changed hands. But Demolition, in terms of their program,
Was it Martel or Santana that got hit with the cane?
Martel, Santana.
Okay.
Santana.
Whoever was the one that was concerned was great acting, because I remember, like, I couldn't remember the exact which, because they dressed similar, but I just remember as a kid watching that, the look of concern looked so genuine for the guy that was hit. And that's when, like, the finishing moves and the moves, like, you could still buy. And I hate to harp on kayfabe, but as great as that John Cena thing was, you then see Triple H and The Rock talking about it out of kayfabe on YouTube, like 20 minutes later. So it's a different era, which is unfortunate. It's harder to suspend disbelief.
Yeah, next, thought it would be interesting to compare influence on wrestling. I mean, the Road Warriors obviously, I think, have the edge here. The big man power team archetype, they inspired, countless imitators, you want to call them that, Powers of Pain, even Demolition. Their look and style, still really iconic. Demolition, on the other hand, were very influential in the WWF tag division. But again, as we talked about at the top of the program, we're seen, as Road Warrior wannabes. I don't want to say ripoff. I think they came into their, when they debuted, clearly they got that criticism, but they came into their own the longer run that they had in the WWF. But clearly, influence, it's got to be the Road Warriors, hands down.
Stevie, I agree with you for that rapper, Travis Scott. And yeah, I agree with you also, Jack. But for the Road Warriors imitators, and let's let the fans weigh in on this too. Who were the worst of the Road Warriors imitators? The Powers of Pain and Demolition would have definitely been two of the best. There was also Blade and Rock, wasn't it? The Road Runners? Blade Runners, yeah.
Sting and Warrior,
yeah. They both ended up very successful themselves. They ended up, actually, you could say, more famous than the Road Warriors.
Yeah, absolutely, but definitely a very influential tag team. When we're talking about longevity, the Road Warriors were active from '83 up until 2003 with Hawk's passing. Animal continued later with that Heidenreich deal. They cut championship success across promotions: NWA, AWA, WWF, WCW, and of course Japan, which
by the way, I don't think anyone's going to argue with me. This was the worst of the Road Warrior ripoffs, and Animal hated them too. The Ascension. Sorry to interrupt, but
I couldn't figure out why they. Was it JBL that came out and buried them the first night they were there?
I don't know, but it's like I knew the Rick Victor, and I actually met the other guy a bunch of times. You couldn't have had personalities in real life further away than the Road Warriors. These were not guys that were like wild, tough guys. They were good. They were good wrestlers, but that was the wrong role for them. But I remember Animal hated them. He found it so offensive that I think they were compared to the Road Warriors on one of the Raws or something, and he was fuming at that. But sorry to interrupt, but it's funny when you type in on Google who were the worst to the Road Warrior ripoffs, this picture literally shows up. What a terrible makeup job on the eye of that one guy.
Yeah, brutal. Ivan, the fan commented as well. Kevin Nash and Al Green in WCW as the Master Blasters. Do you remember them?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think at one point, and I don't want to digress, we could do a whole podcast on Nash, who I like overall. He's one of my favorite wrestlers, and I'm happy I got to wrestle him. People could look that up on here. With Terry Funk refereeing,
That was
there,
a
there's a
great match.
there's a
Great.
childhood dream come through. But I don't think Nash tried his hardest in WCW in those days. I think if he had tried harder, and he ended up trying harder not too long after, because he actually made it big, not being in the business that long. He could have got the Master Blasters. I mean, it sounds stupid, but for that time, that wasn't the worst name in the world. And I also don't think they had a good push either. Weren't they pretty much glorified jobbers?
Well, they started off for a couple of weeks squashing people, and then they moved to the syndicated programs and sort of petered out. I think they had a total of about 3 months, if memory serves me correctly, but they just aesthetically didn't look like a team.
They could have done better though. But honestly, the other thing I'll say about Nash just quick, he could have got the Oz over better. He didn't like it, and it showed he didn't like it. And it's funny, you can see him progressively putting less and less effort into that gimmick. But they did give him a massive push at first. And I think if he wasn't like rebellious about it and like not trying and not wearing the gear right and stuff, it could have got over more. But it ended up working out great for him.
Yeah, and who did not like Vinny Vegas? That was I think they missed there. That was him with his sense of humor.
I liked Scott Hall, and I've said this story. I'll talk about the Civic Center all the time in this podcast. That's the theme of it. I was a huge Diamond Stud fan of Scott Hall. I actually liked him best as the. I'm weird. I liked some wrestlers better in WCW, such as Steve Austin too. But the Diamond Studs Dark match in WWE was June 2nd, 92 at the Civic Center. And I was the only person in the crowd marking out when he came out. And there was another situation like the three demolitions. You didn't know what because of the internet. So I remember sitting there being like, how is the Diamond Stud here? A WCW guy walking out. But I was such a huge fan of his. Like nobody else was excited that night. But I was like going crazy for it and confused at the same time.
Yeah, that was a good character for him, unlike Gator, Scott Hall, or some of the lesser known ones, like his team with Danny Spivey, where American Starship, where he was. I can't remember what his persona was. Was he Wolf or something like that?
I don't remember, but I believe they make an appearance in Grunt the Wrestling movie under that gimmick.
Yeah,
They're in the Battle Royal or something. But Dangerous Dan, the left hand man, you gotta love him. And speaking of the Road Warriors, wasn't there an incident at one point, which I think has been maybe exaggerated since? Animal denied it when I interviewed him, but that supposedly Spivey roughed up the Road Warriors one night and they didn't do anything about it, according to The Undertaker.
I have not heard that, but I would believe it. But fans, if you haven't seen Hannibal's in-person shoot interview with Dan Spivey from a couple of years ago, it's great. You search it up and watch that interview, because you can just tell this guy, even at whatever age he is now, is not someone to be trifled with.
And I was at his house, and again, I was around Animal. I did meet Hawk and Animal when Jacques Rougeau brought them into the Verdun Auditorium, the same place where TNA just went. It was sold out that night in 2002. It was just the Road Warriors against two of Jacques Rougeau's students. That was all there was. And I think PCO wrestled on the card, and it was legitimately sold out, like 4,000 or 5,000 people. I remember seeing Hawk and Animal that night. That was the only time I saw Hawk in person. He didn't look well. And I later found out he was actually supposedly under the influence of something because he had crashed one of the bike. Jock had got motorcycles for them to drive to the ring with. And I guess they were like sponsored Harleys. And he damaged one of them, crashing it against the board. way back, and then he didn't want to pay for the damages. But Animal, like he has the tough guy persona about him. Like he's tough. You can tell being around someone. Same with Demolition. Like you wouldn't want to mess with them. They don't necessarily have that fighter persona though. And neither did Animal, to be honest with you. But Animal had you knew he was tough being around him. Spivey, he's tough. I've been around him. This guy is tough. You can just feel the aura about him. And going back to the Ascension, neither of the Ascension guys have that. They don't even have it to the level of Demolition. They're just actors basically, or like your typical wrestler of today that is just doing it for the performance, which I miss. I miss the Misfits, where it was like the misfits of society that couldn't do it because that did it because it was the only job they could do. What else would Hawk have done? He would have been a bouncer. That's literally it, or a biker.
Well, and they're one of the early examples of what they refer to as the NXT false positive, where they got over there and it did not translate to the main roster. But just comparing longevity, Road Warriors won AWA, NWA, WWF titles. Japan, they were active for a long period of time with that break in between when Hawk quit the business or whatnot. But Demolition, they had that 87 to 91 run in the WWF, and then the wheels fell off the horse, as I like to say, when the third member was introduced. So we got to give them the nod on that in terms of championship success and longevity. Were you impressed when you got to know the Road Warriors more when you're exposed to them on television? What a career they had outside of WWF and specifically Japan.
Yeah, and the AWA. I mean, if you watch their jobber matches, destroying people as I said, as much as people will talk about these 5-star matches with whatever that British guy is from AEW that Meltzer loves, what's his name again?
Not Osprey.
Yeah,
Osprey.
And then there's Zack Sabre Jr. and all this. To me, that does not look realistic, and those guys don't look tough. And if you like that, fine. To me, that's just like a performance of gymnastics. It's not real or gritty at all. The Road Warrior, I would any day pay money to see the Road Warriors, the Ultimate Warrior, Brody or Goldberg, just go in, destroy people as true monsters. That's what I like to see. You're not going to see them go in there and slap their leg when they kick someone. You're not going to see that Petey Williams move with them. Like these moves that they do now that look like you have to cooperate. They're just genuine ass kickers. And I really like the Road Warriors for that perspective. They're by far my favorite tag team of all. Like there's some people that say, oh, Hannibal, you're just bitter and jealous because you don't like Will Ospreay or Kenny Omega or Sami Zayn or all these people. It's like, no, I didn't grow up fans of guys like that. I was never a Dean Malenko fan. Dean Malenko would probably be a top guy now, the way that they push those types. But like, I was a Road Warriors fan. That's the kind of wrestlers that I love. They had mystique about them. You believed in them. And Hawk may not have been the best fighter in the world, but he would fight you. And he was tough.
Well, Dean Malenko would almost be a giant in the current era. But yeah,
I don't know if he still works for AEW or not, but he was working for him for a long time. But it's hard to say who does and doesn't work for them these days with how many people they keep on the what do they call it, the AEW vortex.
Yep, collecting a check. I have some health issues, I understand, but I think he still is employed. Yeah, I would agree with your comments there. I remember in high school, I had a Road Warriors poster in my locker, and one of my all-time favorites really inspired me to hit the gym. And I just don't think the talent today have that same kind of impact on the young people in terms of. I shouldn't say that across the board. I guess if you're into gymnastics, but
Lesnar is the closest that they
yeah,
have now to the Road Warriors. 'Cause, I mean, Lashley's tough. Don't get me wrong, but he doesn't have the means. He's not mean. Like, and again, like you could tell the Road Warriors had a mean side to them. Even Goldberg had a mean side to them. Where Lashley, you can tell like he's doing this. He was signed like out of being a good amateur wrestler. It's not like he had to pay, I mean, he was a great amateur wrestler. I would have hired him too, but it's not like he had to pay dues or like really earn the big contract money he had. So it's not like he was that mean about it because he had no reason to have that mean side of his personality. But with some of these old school guys, they had to work for their push a lot more, or they were just half crazy like Hawk. And they just had a terrible mean streak in them that transcended the television.
Yeah, indeed, a completely different business. I think in the final analysis, in terms of cultural impact, the Road Warriors transcended wrestling in a lot of ways. They were in comics, video games, pop culture references. They're really synonymous with tag
That
team wrestling.
WCW video game from Nintendo. You
That's
ever play
awesome.
that? I was
Oh, I
always
had
a
it.
Road Warriors.
I had it. I loved it. That's why I bought it. Actually, they were on the cover. And then Demolition, although iconic in WWE lore, and there's rumors now that they've signed a Legends deal, that they're finally going to get that. I hadn't heard about the Philly offer before, but there's rumors that they're going to get the nod this year for the Hall of Fame. But they're
They'll
still
get
not
in there eventually now that they've signed a deal, 100%. And also the other thing was, I did talk to Barry Darso recently about an interview, and he says, "Oh, contact me again a little bit down the road, and I'll do one." So it's almost like he doesn't want to necessarily rock the boat. And I'm not saying that's it 100%, but if I was about to get a deal, I wouldn't want to like do a shoot interview where you're going to be asked controversial questions. So I think that's another sign that something might be happening with them soon.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if it's all subjective, but I think in terms of who is the better tag team, Road Warriors edge out Demolition slightly with their innovation, global impact, unforgettable presence. They really, as I said, define the genre. But Demolition, they were very consistent.
Longevity too.
Longevity, yes, very consistent, very dominant, and certainly deserving of that Hall of Fame nod.
Yeah, and I mean, sadly, with the way that it ended with Axe, like the quick fall of Demolition, they went from being one of the main matches of WrestleMania 6 to jobbing to. I mean, I'm not a Japanese wrestling fan. I still don't. I know one of them was called Hand Towel by Bobby Heenan, and one of them was Tenru. But I was always so offended that it's like I used to love these guys. Like I still love Demolition at that point. I'm like, why are they jobbing to these people I've never heard of? And by WrestleMania 8, I think the Kona Crush was already on the scene. Maybe I'm wrong, and there was a bit of an overlap there, but it didn't seem like Demolition. Demolition was dead. That was it for Demolition. Oh yeah, Repo Man was in WrestleMania 8. He was in the 8-man tag, which may not have been on the actual show, but it happened. Jacques Rougeau was also in that. But yeah, then they had Repo Man, and Demolition was quickly dead. They could have got more out of it, honestly. They really could have, but they never really did anything with Barry Darso. He had that Repo Man gimmick, which I didn't like. I did like the Blacktop Bully thing in WCW, but other than that, he's most memorable in WCW for having a million gimmicks.
Yes, and
At least he was paid, and then Demolition did well on the Indies in recent years once they made up. But I think didn't they have real heat for a while where Axe wasn't talking to Smash for a while there, then they made up.
I know Animal and Hawk had that situation when Animal just quit after SummerSlam
Hawk, you
'92.
mean.
But, yeah,
He
sorry.
didn't
Animal.
quit. He was with the Berserker, partying it up. And here's an interesting thing that the Berserker was telling me too, how when Hawk would take drugs, how paranoid he would get, and that he found Hawk. And I do believe this because I've seen people behave like this on drugs, that he found Hawk one day, like in the corner of his house. And the Berserker like had to convince him he wasn't the police coming to visit him, and he was all messed up. But I think even though the Road Warriors broke up and got back together a bunch of time, the time in between was less. And they did go, even though they broke up with that Hawk thing, they went back to have good runs in WCW and Japan. Their last WWF matches, their runs and subsequent like tryout matches or whatever you want to call them, they were all sad, unfortunately. But they drew well on the indies. Animal drew on the indies, as I said, over 1,000 people in Brockville in 2015.
Yep, gone, but certainly not forgotten. Well, Hannibal, this edition of the Fan Forum certainly did not disappoint. We'll be doing others in the future because you picked the topics.
I'll just tell and make sure you subscribe so you get the notifications to vote on the topics, which you guys definitely picked the topics this week. The sad thing is, and I'll always regret this about Animal, when I was with my wife, I didn't like being bothered a lot for a period of time. So there was a period of time where I didn't have a cell phone. We would kind of like share a cell phone, and I had a home phone. And I found that people were texting me a lot about stupid things. So I went a few years where I just had a home phone. And if you wanted to call me, if it was that important, you could call me. And the last communication I had with Animal, because we became friends, and I actually interviewed him right before his death. We actually were friends where we would talk and text each other. He would ask me about stuff because he knew I followed the news. I was leaving for the gym, and he called, and I heard it on the phone that it was Animal, and I'm like, I'll get him the next day or something, or when I get back from the gym. And I didn't answer it, and he died the next day. And when I heard the message, all he wanted to do was talk to me about a promoter from Canada that was trying to book him, and he wanted to know if the guy was credible or not. But it was like, fuck. I mean, it may have been the next day or 2 days after, but it was literally right before he died. And even now, it still bothers me and makes me really sad because it's like I could have had one last conversation with Road Warrior Animal, and I just was in too much of a rush because it was a Sunday, I remember, and the gym was closing, and I just wanted to get to the gym because whatever. But God bless you, Animal. You're one of my favorites, and you'd be on my list of nicest wrestlers. Take care up there in heaven.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely Hall of Fame guys, and you know, everybody had their demons, their ups and downs, but Hawk, when he was straight, was you know, according to people, a great guy too. But fans, we're going to shut this edition of the Fan Forum down. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, like this video, hit the notifications button, and watch for future polls, because we're going to be taking your suggestions, putting them into polls, and doing this. It's always a great deal of fun. So for Hannibal, I am Jack Kilby saying bye-bye for now.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this